Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. If you're familiar with American history, you'll know his name. His name is John Hinckley Jr. Last name is spelled Hinkley. He's just published a book. I read through it. The full title of the book is Who I Really Am. I found it very interesting. It all kind of hinges around the events that took place in 1981 and the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. So, John Hinckley Jr., welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
For people who may not be familiar kind of with this book and your history, and it goes back into your past. You grew up in Dallas and North Dallas. Maybe you can talk about your growing up age, or your home life growing up, and then that's a good place to start. Can you start there?
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, but at the age of about 4, we moved to Dallas, Texas, and that's where I grew up. Was in Dallas. We had a good family. My father provided very well for us. He was in the oil business and was making good money, so we never lacked for anything. And we had a really good life. At the age of 18, my father moved the family to Colorado, but at 18 I went off to college at Texas Tech, and I see that as kind of the point where I kind of got estranged from my family and isolated, and that's where my mental illness started when I went off to college.
Right. So you went off there. So you had a nice upbringing, kind of in North Dallas. Dad's in the oil business. Um, you always kind of wanted to be a musician, right? That was kind of your
I
main
did,
goal.
yeah. When the Beatles hit America in 1964, I was just totally enthralled with the Beatles, and my parents bought me a guitar when I was about 10, and my life has been really devoted to music since then.
And writing lyrics, like you have a lot of your poetry's in your book as well. So it's not just the kind of style of music you were interested. You said you went to Rolling Stones concerts, followed Bob Dylan, kind of a normal kind of cultural upbringing, right? With Lennon.
Sure.
Yeah. And then so you were in one of the things that affected you is you were in Dallas when JFK was assassinated. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was 8 years old, and he was murdered in my city, and I just couldn't believe it. And of course, the whole city was shocked. But yeah, that really affected me. Even though I was only 8, it really affected me because I saw how much my parents and everybody else was affected.
And you'd kind of define your parents more as conservative leaning. Would that be fair?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
But they were still shocked by the killing of JFK in their hometown. Is that right?
My father actually was a Goldwater man.
Okay,
I can
gotcha,
remember one of my first, not my first memories, but I can remember having my father had Goldwater signs in our yard.
gotcha. But I mean, how did you think that it affected the shooting of JFK affected everyone in Dallas? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it affected the whole country, the whole world. It was just so shocking what happened. And even though my parents were not fans of Kennedy, they were still shocked by it.
Right. And so your desire for a music career kind of brought you to Los Angeles, is that right?
1976, I moved out to Hollywood, California, to pursue my music, and but unfortunately, by 1976, I was not doing well mentally. I was really getting depressed and isolated, and I couldn't go about it correctly the way they try and get into the music world. What I would do, I would just take my songs on a tape and walk into Capitol Records or United Artists and just give my tape to the receptionist and say, "Please give this to the A&R guy." And of course, that's not the way you do it, but that's the only way I could do it at that time.
That was the time, pre-internet time, well, how would you define your music style?
It's folk and Beatles type. I mean, pop. I grew up in the '60s rock, which I still think is the best. I grew up loving '60s rock. So my songs are heavily influenced by Dylan and the Beatles.
Right. So folk Beatles style, and that kind of led you around. And how would you, I mean, you kind of, the sense that I got from reading through your book is you didn't have a kind of traditional work goal. Like your other siblings might followed your dad into the oil business, but you didn't have, weren't looking for like a typical 9 to 5 job, right?
No, my father wanted me to be a businessman like him. So when I went off to college, my first major was business, and I was really bored to tears and didn't do well in business. So I transferred to English major and history minor and did much better.
Gotcha. So you're familiar with that, and you show a lot of like knowledge of current events and kind of the zeitgeist at that time. Would you agree with that? That you were following things and reading the books and looking at the culture?
I would say so. Yeah, I was trying to keep up with everything.
And what happened? What I mean, one of the turning points in your life was watching a certain film, right? Can you talk about that?
Well, in 1976, when I was living in Hollywood, the movie Taxi Driver came out, and I went to see it, and just was really engrossed with the movie, and I saw it about 15 times, and I could just relate so well to the main character, Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro, because I was living my life much in a similar way to what Travis Bickle was living his life. Of course, I wasn't a taxi driver, but I just kind of had the um, same way of looking at the world that he did, and I just related to him so much.
And he was based, I mean, for people who don't know, my understanding is he was based on another person by the name of Arthur Bremer. Are you aware of that?
I think I am now. At the time,
Yeah.
I don't think I was aware of that. No.
Gotcha. That was the guy who shot George Wallace. So you are interested in not only Taxi Driver, but you're also enamored of the actress there too, Jodie Foster, right? So that's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
where
that's
that started.
correct. That's actually the reason I went to see the movie in the first place, because I saw that she was in the movie, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll go check this movie out. And yeah, she was the reason I actually went to the movie in the first place.
And you watched it at least a dozen times, according to your book. Is that right?
Yeah, I watched
Yeah.
it. I kept going back to that same theater and watching it over and over.
Yeah, it's a different time back then. You had to go back to inside a place to actually watch stuff. You couldn't watch it over and over on a CD or stream it,
No,
right?
no, no.
Yeah,
This is 1976.
right. So, and you also kind of was a hobo's lullaby. So you're kind of living that lifestyle that Bickle did. This maybe grittier lifestyle. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was living in 1976. Hollywood was a really seedy place. They had a lot of prostitutes up and down the street and all that kind of and drugs and everything going on, and it was really seedy. And I was kind of in the middle of all that, living right in a little small apartment, right in the middle of all that. So in a way, it was like what Travis was living with.
Right. So this Travis Bickle character, and you kind of wanted to emulate him, right? Like you not only admired him, but you kind of wanted to dress like him and act like him. Is that correct?
I did eventually. Yeah, I kind of dressed the way he dressed, and he would drink. I believe it was peach brandy, so I drank peach brandy.
Gotcha. And you also had kind of a short kind of flirtation with the American fascist group, right?
I did, yeah. It just shows you where I was mentally at the time. That I was just, you know, dark, and my heart was just dark at that time. And yeah, I got caught up in that group, but it was brief.
Did you meet any of the leaders of the American Nazi Party? Was it
No, I didn't.
Rockwell?
No, I didn't.
Rockwell, yeah. I think Patler was another guy's name. There's one guy who like wrote a thing. He's still around. I forgot. Um, and then what happened in your life, right in those like late mid 70s?
Well, I still was kind of moving around from Dallas to Lubbock, Texas, whereas I was dropping in and out of school. I never did graduate, but I accumulated a lot of credits, but I just kept dropping in and out in the late 70s. In the 1980, I was living in Dallas, and then also in Colorado, where my parents had their home. And I saw where Jodie Foster was going to be going to college at Yale University in the fall of '80. So I made a point of going to New Haven, where Yale is, and tracking her down.
Right. So that was New Haven. And you kind of moved around a lot. Like you were going Colorado, Texas, DC. And you actually had it, I mean, according to your book, you had it in your mind that you were you were going to go after Jimmy Carter. Is that correct?
I did. I mean, it's just solely because he was president. I had nothing against Carter, but he was the president, and it's why I was stalking him for a short time. And there's actually in Dayton, Ohio, there's film of me being very close to Carter as he's campaigning for the re-election, but nothing happened that day.
And that was shown at trial, right? That
Yes,
you
it
were there. And
was.
that's very similar to like the pictures of Bremer and of Bickle too, who went to, at least in the film, he went to, I think it was Palpatine or Palatine was
Valentine.
Palatine. That's right. Yeah, Palatine. Um, so you were traveling around, and how did you finance your trips? Because you moved before your arrest, you moved around the country often, right?
I told my father that I was going to a writing school in New Haven, Connecticut, at Yale, and I talked him into giving me I believe it was $3,600, which I told him I would pay him back. So yeah, that's how I financed my hotels and travel, was through the.
Yeah, that's a lot of money at the time, right?
It sure was.
And you also in your book, one thing that I didn't know about you is you were carrying a lot of weaponry, much like the famous scene of Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. You had an incident at an airport where you were arrested. Can you talk about that?
I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was rushing to catch this flight because I was running late. And I thought they were going to put my luggage underneath the plane where it didn't go through screening. But because I was running so late, they put my suitcase through the screening. And sure enough, 3 guns showed up, and I was arrested, taken to a holding cell, and eventually went before a magistrate who fined me $62.50, and they took my guns.
And did nothing else really happen to that after that? You never got the
No,
guns back, right?
no, I did not.
And so that was kind of one thing. The other thing was you were deeply affected by the killing of John Lennon that happened December 8th, 1980. Can you talk about
Oh,
that?
yes, very much so. I couldn't believe that somebody wanted to kill John Lennon, but I was very upset by it. I went. I was in D.C. at the time of the killing, and I went up to New York and attended a vigil at Central Park the following weekend for John Lennon. But yeah, I was just really, really devastated by it.
So you went to the Dakota too, outside there in Central Park. So you felt like compelled to go take part in the
Right.
memorial, right, of Lennon.
Yes.
And that was the, I mean, what are your thoughts on Mark David Chapman at that time?
Well, I hated him for what he did because he killed my idol. I was John Lennon was kind of my idol for many, many years, and so I hated Chapman for what he did.
Right. And so during that time too, you That's kind of when you're kind of really started spiraling, according to your book. You kind of spiraled downward. You were taking antidepressants and Valium, is that right?
Yes,
Okay,
I was addicted to Valium.
you're addicted to Valium. How long was your addiction? Was it over the years or was it just short term?
Late 70s until the time of my arrest.
Gotcha. And your parents took you to, like, after, I think in late 80s or 81, you were taken to a psychiatrist. Can you talk about that?
I was referred to a psychiatrist I was living in Evergreen, Colorado, and I was referred to a psychiatrist there, and I did some sessions with him, but I don't think the sessions are very helpful.
Can you just, I mean, you describe in the sessions that he hooked you up to some biofeedback machine. Is that correct?
Yeah, back in '80, biofeedback was very popular. It's a machine which kind of gauges your anxiety. And this doctor kind of thought my whole problem was anxiety. So he would hook me up to this machine and have headphones on me, and it kind of gauges. You hear this beeping sound. So if you're real anxious, there's a lot of beeping going on. If you're less anxious, less beeping. So I would really calm down in the office, hooked up to the machine. But once I went back outside, the anxieties returned. So I just thought it wasn't very useful.
Right. But he kind of told your parents, according to your book, he said that you should kind of be let back into, just let back to do whatever you were doing. Is that right?
Yeah, he just didn't take it seriously what I was telling him. I mean, to be honest, I did not tell him everything I was doing, like stalking presidents. I didn't tell him that, but I did tell him about Jodie Foster, and so I just didn't find him very helpful.
And his name is Dr. John Hopper. I think he's still around. Is that right?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, because there was a lawsuit. Your parents brought a lawsuit against him, right? Do you
I don't
remember
know.
that? Okay, there was something like that, if I remember. Um, so that was it. So you're in the care of a guy named Dr. John Hopper, and you kind of the the you were kind of spiraling down. You were going to actually go back to the Dakota too to end your life too. Can you talk about that?
Well, I believe it's Valentine's Day of '81, a couple of months after Lennon's murder. I was at the Dakota, in front of the Dakota, and I was going to kill myself, and on the spot where John Lennon was killed. But I backed out of doing it. But yeah, that just shows you. I was just very, very crazy at the time.
Right. And then you also I mean, you were stalking Ted Kennedy. That was another thing I didn't know. You actually went to Ted Kennedy's office too there in early 1981. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then you also had one of the interesting things that's similar to Mark David Chapman is your interest in the book Catcher in the Rye. Can you talk about that?
Well, I had read the book and really liked the book, but then when I heard that Chapman was, so caught up in the book, and he actually was holding the book when he was arrested after killing Lennon, that I just became more interested in the book. And when I was arrested in my hotel room, they found a copy of Catcher in the Rye.
Right. And according to a book, I think it's called Rawhide Down on your like you had they brought this up in your trial, but that you were moving around the United States a lot, much like Chapman, and that you had the book with you and you would sometimes read from the book. Do you recall that?
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
read from it frequently.
Okay. So you did. So it was close to you. I mean, in those last days up to your arrest,
Right.
you would say that it was close. I mean, it was important. Like, I think you wrote in your book, like, you kept a copy of it to, like, calm your nerves, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
I like the book. Holden Caulfield was the character in the book, and I was a living, breathing Holden Caulfield.
So you saw because that's what Chapman thought as well. He really identified with Holden Caulfield.
Right.
So you identified with Bickle and Holden Caulfield. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay.
true.
And I mean, it's interesting because the Taxi Driver screenwriter, you have quotes from the book. this book was co-written with Jason Norman, right? Did he help you along with this?
Yes.
Gotcha. So like, it's interesting how Schrader kind of talks about your, interest in this thing. So what happened next? Like leading up to the events, I think it was April 1981. Can you also, I mean, one of the interesting things that's reflected in the book is your knowledge of other American assassinations. Like you went to the Ford Theater too, right?
Right.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about that?
There's a picture of me in front of Ford's Theater.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was just check that whole thing out. But leading up to the shooting, I was just kept going back to New Haven, Connecticut, and slipping poems and notes under Jodie Foster's door at her dormitory. I talked to Jodie on the phone a few times and taped the phone calls, and they were played at my trial. But yeah, so it was just Jodie was just the big focus.
Right. So you kind of what they said your motive was to impress upon her your interest in her, right? Is that correct?
I just thought by committing the crime that I committed that it would impress her greatly, and you know she would fall in love with me and all that stuff. I mean, saying it now I know it's outlandish, but that's the way I was feeling at the time.
Right. So you were arrested for, I mean, you had a lot of weaponry. I think it was a six shooter, right? And the incident occurred in April 81. What happened next?
The incident was March 30th.
Excuse me, March 30th. I apologize. March 30th, 1981.
Well, I was arrested on the spot. I thought I was going to be killed after what I did, but I was tackled by a lot of people, and I was arrested and taken to a jail, and that started the whole thing of preparing for trial. And my trial was in 1982, and I was found not guilty by reason of insanity, which caused a big uproar in the country at the time.
And did you feel like you had good legal representation?
Oh yes, I did.
did,
I had
okay.
tremendous representation.
And you were assessed by many different psychologists or psychiatrists. Is that correct?
Yeah, pre-trial, I was examined by many doctors. In preparation for the trial, I was examined by 4 doctors for the government, and we had about 3 or 4 doctors, and so I was having to go through lots of interviews with doctors.
Lots of interviews and tests. Is that correct?
Right.
And then, so you were found not guilty, but you still had to go into a treatment, right, or a
Well,
facility.
the day after the verdict, I was taken to St. Elizabeth's Hospital in D.C., which is a psychiatric facility, and that's where I, spent 30 something years there, receiving treatment.
And it's now defunct, right? So you were released permanently. Your permanent release was 2020. Is that right?
2022.
2022. Excuse me. What was it like being in this institution for 30 years? Can you talk about that?
Well, I was about the only white person there. We're talking about Washington, D.C., and so all the patients were black, all the staff were black, except just a few. So I stuck out like a sore thumb there because not only was I white, but I had all this notoriety going on, and the patients would see me on TV, and they couldn't believe they were standing there right. I was standing there right in front of them. So yeah, I just stuck out like a sore thumb at St. Elizabeth's, especially in the early days.
And how did you adapt there? Would they allow you to play your music and write and everything?
They did allow me to have a guitar, which helped greatly. I could always retreat to my room and play my guitar if I was having a bad day. And I was still at the time writing a lot of poetry, so I was writing poetry and songs.
Right. And you're still doing that to this day. Like you have a YouTube channel. you're playing music, things like that. Is that right?
I have about 55 or 60 songs of mine on Spotify and the other streaming sites. If anybody wants to listen to my music, just go to Spotify or Apple or iTunes or any of them, and you can hear my songs. I also have a YouTube channel where I play my guitar and sing my songs.
And what's it like being on the outside now after being in an institution for 30 years? How's it feel?
Well, I love it. You know, I'm living a quiet life here in Williamsburg, Virginia, with my 2 cats, and the people here in town kind of leave me alone, and I can go out and about shopping and stuff, and people leave me alone. Sometimes people will come up to me and want to take a picture with me or something. I'll do that, but the main thing I like about Williamsburg is that people are nice to me here.
And I mean, you're in your 70s now. What does it feel like kind of looking back at the arc of your life? I know you have some, I think your final chapter is winning and losing at once. Like, can you talk about that?
Well, I'm 70. I turned 70. I'm 70. So I just hope to, live my remaining years peacefully. The country right now, to me, is just really in a bad place with all the violence going on and all the anger going on. So I'm just trying to live peacefully and not cause anybody any problems.
Right, and sing your song and your music and your poetry, which is interspersed throughout the book. And the book has just been released, right? It's out.
It was released December the 9th. It's available on Amazon. It's called John Hinckley Jr., Who I Really Am.
And did you find that the writing the book was a cathartic or kind of like a good experience or bad, or what are your thoughts now
It
that it's
became a good experience. In the beginning, it was really hard because I had kind of packed away all those memories for many years, but I had to start talking about all my early days again. So it was hard in the beginning, but it became like a cathartic, therapeutic experience after a while, just to get it all out.
Do you feel like you have a pretty good take on your past like a life, like you don't have any periods of amnesia or anything like that, do you?
No, I have a very good memory,
Oh, that's
so
good.
that
So you
helps.
remember all that. And the book, John Hinckley Jr., Who I Really Am, is available on Amazon, Kindle, audiobook, paperback, and hardcover. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. And then Jason Norman, what was it like writing a book with a co-author or somebody who helped you out? Did you find that to be worthwhile?
He's a nice guy. I mean, he's the reason we have this book is because he approached me out of the
Oh, I see.
blue
Okay.
and just asked me if I wanted to collaborate on a book. And I had to think about it for a little bit, but then I thought, yeah, why not? I'll go ahead and tell my life story. So he was easy to work with.
Oh, that's good. The do you feel like you're a much different person than the person that was arrested in
Oh,
1981?
totally.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
just completely different. I talk about that person in 1981 that I was, but I'm just so far removed from him that it's almost like I'm talking about somebody else.
Right. Do you feel like the time in the institution allowed you to reflect and let you kind of sift through kind of your earlier thoughts? Or, I mean, I think you said in your book you had kind of obsessions about certain things. Is that correct?
I never had one like with Jody, but I had a lot of interest at the hospital, and one of the main things I was doing at the hospital was I took care of a feral colony of cats,
Hmm.
feral cats. And that helped get me through my days, tending to these cats.
Gotcha. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I mean, we're at the 30-minute mark. I know you said you had 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, there's a lot more in this book, a lot more to the story, a lot of details, but I'm glad you wrote it for because it's like a historical record. I think it's important. And it also shows, at least my takeaway is how culture can influence people. Would you agree that the culture of the 70s, which was a chaotic era, um, had an effect upon you, good or bad?
Oh yes, greatly.
Okay, yeah.
Mostly for the bad, but yeah, greatly.
And it's like you were young too. Like I think the assassination attempt took place when you were 26. I think Chapman was 24, so you guys are both fairly young. Do you feel like you were suggestible or impressionable as a young teenager or a man in
Yes.
your early 20s? Okay,
Yes.
so that was it. Um, do you feel like you would? Yeah, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add, or anything I missed before we wrap it up? Or
I just hope people will buy the book and they'll see my story from my point of view. You know, for so many years, there's been this real negative image of me that that I hadn't changed, that I didn't have remorse and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the truth. And if they read my book, they'll see that I have tremendous remorse for what I did, and that I'm completely different person from the person I was in 1981.
Gotcha. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, the author's name is John Hinckley Jr., and the new book is Who I Really Am. You can check it out on Amazon. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.